Don't forget to like this video if you love stories where humans stand unbroken against the galaxy. Comment your thoughts below. Would you trust a giant stealth leopard at your side in enemy territory? And subscribe for more powerful HFY tales every week. Dane Kellen crouched beneath the arching roots of a fungal tower, his breathing calm despite the alien jungle's suffocating humidity pressing against his lungs. The moon Varkish 4 never slept, its forest floor pulsed with bioluminescent moss, flickering in colors that would hypnotize a lesser mind. Dane ignored the glow. His attention remained fixed on the infrared overlay dancing in his visor, mapping the approach of the coalition strike team fanning out through the dense foliage. He shifted slightly, feeling the press of blackened alloy plates against his ribs, the silent whir of his adaptive camouflage adjusting to match the twisted root textures around him. Sweat trickled down his temple, caught by the absorbent lining of his hood. He didn't wipe it. Movements wasted energy and created unnecessary signals. Efficiency was survival. His mission had been simple on paper. Infiltrate the coalition's newly constructed listening post and corrupt its data banks with viral protocols that would blind their orbital sensors for weeks. In reality, it meant slipping unseen through patrol routes, biometric scanners, aerial drones, and layered electromagnetic trip webs. It meant killing 2 sentries with single silent strokes and melting their bodies into the acid pools beneath the fungal towers before alarms could be raised. He had succeeded, of course. That was why they hunted him now. Through the shifting undergrowth, Dane counted 8 life signatures in a crescent formation, their armor heat-resistant and plated with dull gray carapace segments. 2 wielded pulse carbines with underslung grenade launchers. 3 carried compact railguns designed for urban suppression. The others bore curved plasma glaives, glowing faintly at the edges with condensed ionization. A strike team built for capture and threat elimination. Overkill against any standard scout. But Dane Kellen was not standard. He inhaled the thick, fungal-scented air. His eyes flicked to his wrist display, verifying the pulse counter wired into his chest rig. Steady. No panic. Only preparation. A low rustle in the shadows to his left caught his ear. No coalition footfall sounded like that. It was softer, heavier, gliding without breaking a single glowing stem beneath. He didn't turn to look. He didn't need to. One of the soldiers stepped forward, voice amplified through his helmet's external speakers. Human scout. You are surrounded. Your extraction shuttle is destroyed. Your command ship has retreated beyond system range. Drop your weapons and place your hands on your head. Dane remained silent, his gaze sweeping across the strike team's formation. Their spacing was tight, optimized for jungle combat, each covering overlapping sectors to prevent flanking. Their commander was well-trained. That would make this more interesting. The soldier spoke again, his tone dripping with false magnanimity. Do this and your death will be swift and painless. Resist and you will be captured alive for processing. We know you sabotaged the listening post. We know you are alone. Dane smiled beneath his hood. Alone. That assumption would be their undoing. The one with the plasma glaive shifted his weight, adjusting for a potential pounce. Dane noted the tension in his legs, the micro-twitches of readiness visible through his visor's edge detection algorithm. Trained in close quarters suppression. Dangerous if allowed into melee range. Overhead, a pair of pale moth-like creatures fluttered by, their wings scattering flecks of luminous dust. It drifted down, sparkling over the strike team like falling embers. Their helmets filtered out the spore's mild hallucinogenic properties, but it blurred the thermal contrast just enough to grant Dane an advantage. His breathing slowed even further. 4 seconds in. 6 seconds out. Every exhale a silent preparation for violence. He knew what they saw. A lone Terran scout with a dark composite rifle strapped across his chest, a vibroknife sheathed at his hip, a pack smaller than standard issue for extended operations. A human weighed down by gear, stamina likely depleted after days behind enemy lines. They saw prey. The plasma glaive wielder took another step forward. The squad's commander, a broad-shouldered Zarathi male with green-black scaled skin, raised a hand to stop him. His slitted yellow eyes narrowed behind his helmet's tinted visor. He's too calm, the commander hissed in his native tongue, thinking Dane couldn't hear. Hold position. Thermal sweep now. 2 soldiers adjusted their scanners. Dane remained motionless, counting heartbeats. Their sweep beams passed over him, rippling against the adaptive camouflage's nanofiber surface. His suit's power draw spiked for an instant, but the microreactor embedded at his lower back compensated, masking the surge. Nothing but fungal root systems, reported one of the sweepers. The commander clicked his mandibles in annoyance. Close the perimeter. Flashnet protocol on my mark. Their gauntlets shifted, locking forearm projectors into place. Small orbs deployed, hovering in the humid air around Dane's location. Each was designed to detonate with a burst of blinding light and electromagnetic disruption, temporarily disabling camouflage systems and incapacitating organic targets through neural overload. They wanted him alive. For interrogation. For display. For whatever message they intended to send to humanity about what happens to lone Terran saboteurs. The orbs beeped softly in synchronized countdown. Dane counted with them. 3, 2, 1. They detonated. Brilliant white flooded the jungle floor, illuminating every twisting root and vine in stark shadowed contrast. The undergrowth lit up like a living cathedral. The strike team surged forward, shouting in triumphant aggression, weapons raised to subdue. But Dane was not there. The Flashnet's electromagnetic pulse left static rippling across his visor, but he had already rolled backwards into a sinkhole hollow moments before detonation, bracing for the flare with his eyes closed and system optics powered down. He landed silently in a crouch, one hand braced against the moist earth, the other gripping the curved hilt of his vibro knife. Above, the soldiers searched in confusion. Their triumphant roars turned to uncertain shouts. Then a shadow moved behind them. Dane heard it rather than saw it, a whisper of dense muscle sliding across moss, the near-silent intake of humid air through broad nostrils. He felt his pulse quicken, not from fear but from anticipation. One soldier turned, his visor catching the faintest reflection of pale green eyes before darkness swallowed him. His scream cut short as something massive and black-spotted surged from beneath an overhanging root, jaws closing around his helmet and neck with a wet crunch. The body crumpled. The shadow held it for a breath, then lowered it soundlessly to the glowing moss. The strike team froze. A single hiss of primal terror passed among them as they realized he was not alone. Dane rose from the hollow, his camouflage flickering as his suit recalibrated. He moved without urgency, without sound, each step measured and confident. The soldiers spun in panic, guns sweeping wildly. Dane raised a single gloved hand, flicking his fingers in a silent gesture towards the shadows. The glowing eyes blinked once, unhurried. The giant leopard melted backwards into the darkness, leaving only the corpse behind as evidence it had ever been there. The commander's breathing grew ragged, amplified in Dane's audio feed. Thermal sweep. Full arc. Find it now. But thermal sweeps would find nothing. Naira's fur was coated with adaptive microfilms, and his internal temperature ran cooler than any feline species, genetically engineered for this exact form of shadow warfare. He was a creature born of Terran apex predators and military biogenesis labs. 700 pounds of coiled death, paws broader than a man's head, rosette fur that swallowed light, and fangs long enough to pierce reinforced ceramic plating. He was Dane's partner. His only partner. As the soldiers frantically formed a tighter ring, Dane slotted his vibroknife back into its sheath, reaching for the grip of his suppressed rifle. The night air hummed around him with the tension of impending violence. They still believed this was a hunt. They still believed they were the hunters. And that was why they were already dead. Dane tracked the shift in their breathing patterns before he saw their movements. The strike team pressed in tighter, forming a trembling crescent around their commander. Pulse carbines swept the darkness, barrels trembling. The plasma glaive wielder stepped protectively in front of his leader, eyes darting between shadows that seemed to breathe. None of them spoke this time. The only sound was the hum of their armor reactors and the frantic rasp of filtered breaths. Dane raised his rifle, sighting along the thermal overlay. His camouflage flickered in sync with the rippling phosphorescent moss. He didn't fire. Not yet. Killing a single soldier would only snap them out of fear and back into focused aggression. No, this needed to build. Fear must ferment before it became paralyzing. He lowered the weapon and flicked his fingers twice towards the dark shelf of fungal roots beside him. A faint reflection of green eyes blinked back, silent understanding in that brief flash. Then the eyes were gone. Across the clearing, a soldier began to whisper prayers in his native tongue, syllables thick with consonants and clicking intonations. His companions glanced at him in irritation, but none ordered him to silence. Even the commander remained quiet, mandibles clenched, yellow eyes scanning in mounting dread. Dane activated his wrist gauntlet's microswitch, deploying 3 sonic decoy discs. Each one skittered across the moss silently before adhering to the thick fungal trunks. He input quick frequency variations, setting them to emit randomized echoes of movement and shallow breathing patterns. Instantly, the strike team's HUD overlays erupted with proximity alerts. They spun in confusion, weapons training on every false target that bloomed red across their visors. He moved then, gliding between shadows with practiced grace. The microreactor at his back kept his suit's power flow steady, thermal dampeners humming with barely contained energy. His pulse remained slow and steady. Each step brought him closer to the group, but his attention was not on them. It was on Naira. The leopard's silhouette shifted from the shadows of a root arch, almost invisible even to Dane's enhanced optics. Muscles rippled beneath rosette fur as Naira slunk forward, head low, whiskers twitching in anticipation. His fangs gleamed faintly as his lips curled back in silent readiness. Dane flicked a micro-laser pointer from his wrist towards the fungal tower overhead. Naira's eyes tracked the red dot, and without hesitation he launched upwards in a single fluid bound. His claws pierced the soft trunk, carrying his massive body 10 meters into the air. There he paused, body pressed against the fungus like an extension of the shadows themselves. Below, the soldiers continued to panic, their formation collapsing into disarray. Two broke left, attempting to flank an illusionary decoy signature. Their footfalls pounded the mossy ground, splashing glowing spores into the humid air. Dane watched them go, mentally noting their retreat paths for later pursuit. The others remained clustered near the commander, pulse carbines raised, eyes darting. A creak above them drew their gaze. For an instant, they glimpsed only darkness among the thick stalks. Then Naira dropped from above, a silent black comet descending upon one of the railgun troopers. The impact drove the soldier flat against the fungal floor with a crack that echoed through the clearing. His railgun clattered to the moss as Naira's jaws clamped around the back of his neck, crushing bone and reinforced alloy in a single flex of muscle. The others screamed, staggering backwards, firing wild bursts into the darkness. Plasma rounds seared glowing trails through the air, illuminating Naira's outline for brief terrifying flashes as he released his grip and disappeared into the undergrowth once more, vanishing without a sound. "Focus," the commander roared, his voice cracking with fear. "Tighten ranks. Switch to infrared scan. Find it. Find him." But they found nothing. Naira's body temperature remained hidden beneath his bioengineered fur, cooler than the jungle floor itself. Dane watched as the soldiers' helmet feeds flickered with corrupted readings, each negative scan only increasing their terror. He moved forward, rifle trained on the plasma glaive wielder now standing alone at the edge of the formation, blade held in a trembling grip. Dane didn't fire. Instead he reached to his belt and pulled a flashbang micromine. Thumb pressed to the activation pad, he counted down silently in his mind. 2, 1. He lobbed it into the air with a flick of his wrist. The small cylindrical device bounced once off a fungal stalk before detonating with a muted pop. White phosphor light erupted across the clearing, searing the glaive wielder's vision. His scream was ragged and guttural as he dropped his blade and clawed at his helmet lenses, desperately trying to clear the blinding afterimages. Dane moved in a blur. He closed the distance with swift, silent strides, rifle slung across his back as his vibroknife slid free of its sheath. He grabbed the soldier's helmet with his left hand, yanked it back, and drove the knife's vibrating blade under the chin guard with a single upward thrust. The soldier shuddered once before falling limp. Dane pulled the blade free and wiped it against the moss before sheathing it once more. Silence reclaimed the clearing, broken only by the harsh panting of the remaining troops. Naira reappeared at Dane's side, silent as the grave, his massive head level with Dane's chest, eyes glowing with eerie intelligence. Dane rested his gloved hand against the leopard's muscular neck, feeling the steady pulse beneath that black rosette fur. For a long moment, man and beast stood there, silent in shared understanding. They were a single unit, honed by years of training and trust. No words. No commands. Only instinct and bond. The commander backed away, step by trembling step, his plasma pistol raised but shaking. His scaled hands were slick with sweat. Behind him, two surviving troopers formed a desperate shield wall, weapons aimed outward, backs pressed together. Their eyes darted between Dane's still silhouette and Naira's low, predatory crouch. The commander's voice cracked as he spoke. What are you?" Dane tilted his head slightly, considering the question. To them, perhaps he was a demon, a spirit of Terran vengeance summoned to butcher arrogant intruders. But he knew the truth. He was merely a man, disciplined, trained, ruthless when needed. The difference was, Terrans understood the value of nature's oldest weapons. Where the galaxy sought to build bigger guns and stronger alloy plating, Earth simply looked to its own apex predators and asked, "What if we gave them a purpose?" He said nothing, letting silence deepen the commander's fear. Naira's tail flicked, brushing Dane's calf like a silent question. Not yet, Dane thought. He took a single step forward, rifle unslung once more, its matte barrel aimed at the commander's trembling chest. The two surviving troopers tightened their grip on their weapons, eyes wide behind their visors. A distant howl echoed through the jungle, a chorus of insectoid chittering rising in response. Dane didn't flinch. Naira didn't blink. The sounds of alien life were background noise compared to the pounding hearts in front of them. The commander swallowed hard. We can negotiate, human. We can offer you safe passage. Credits. Information. Anything. Just let us leave. Dane's visor concealed his expression, but his eyes were hard and cold as orbital stone. There would be no negotiations tonight. He reached up slowly, pressing two fingers against Naira's shoulder in a silent command. The leopard's muscles coiled beneath his fur, shoulders rippling like liquid shadow as he slid back into the darkness. Only his eyes remained visible for a heartbeat longer, glowing faintly between the vines before vanishing entirely. Dane lowered his rifle slightly, giving the illusion of reconsideration. The commander's stance relaxed a fraction, enough for Dane to see it. Enough to confirm they were still prey. Naira reappeared behind the two troopers with a flicker of movement so subtle it seemed unreal. Before either could turn, his jaws closed around the neck of the railgun wielder, severing spine and armor plating in a single devastating bite. The last trooper screamed, swinging his pulse carbine wildly, spraying glowing plasma bolts into the foliage. Naira released the dead soldier and lunged sideways, knocking the screaming man off his feet, fangs closing around his throat to silence him instantly. The commander fell to his knees, plasma pistol clattering to the mossy ground. His helmet tipped back as he stared up at Dane in utter terror. Dane raised his rifle once more, sighting along the barrel, eyes cold and unblinking behind his visor. Naira padded forward, blood dripping silently from his jaws, his gaze locked on the commander with feral anticipation. The commander's voice broke as he whispered, "Please?" Dane said nothing. Mercy had no place here. Naira lowered his head, lips curling back to reveal gleaming fangs as he prepared to end the final target. Dane's pulse remained steady. Mission parameters dictated that no enemy could be allowed to report what they saw tonight. It was a directive he had never struggled to follow. He let his silence be the last sound the commander ever heard. As Naira lunged forward, darkness swallowed the man's scream before it could even rise. The clearing reeked of blood and ozone. Naira licked crimson from his whiskers, silent as he sat beside Dane, broad shoulders heaving with each slow, deep breath. The giant leopard's ears flicked towards the distant drone of alien insects, then swiveled back to the scout in silent deference. All threats eliminated. No need to hunt unless commanded. Dane scanned the battlefield with methodical precision. 8 coalition soldiers dead. Their bodies sprawled across glowing moss, their weapons dark and lifeless. The commander's plasma pistol still lay at his knees, half submerged in a pool of bioluminescent liquid seeping from crushed fungal roots. Steam rose from the blood-soaked ground, curling around Naira's paws in ghostly tendrils. He activated his wrist gauntlet's mission feed, confirming the data corruption at the listening post remained stable. Coalition orbital scans would be blind for at least 6 standard weeks. It was enough time for the Terran fleet to reposition, refit, and strike from shadows as easily as Dane moved now. That was his purpose, to blind, to bleed, to leave only terror in the dark. Naira nudged his leg with a massive head, faint rumble vibrating in his chest. Dane reached down, gloved fingers brushing behind the leopard's ear. Naira's eyes half closed, pupils slitting in brief contentment before returning to their cold, focused gleam. "Good boy," Dane whispered. He checked his ammunition count, ejecting a depleted magazine and slotting in a fresh one with silent efficiency. His knife remained clean this time. Naira had done the final work without hesitation. The bond between man and beast needed no spoken commands. Years of combat drills, reinforced behavioral conditioning, and simple trust had created a unit more cohesive than any squad of human soldiers alone. Dane's visor flickered as his suit sensors picked up faint vibrations in the fungal substrate. He turned his head slightly, triangulating with the integrated sonar overlay. 3 more life signatures approaching from the south ridge, moving in staggered wedge formation. He recognized their movement patterns instantly. Coalition reinforcements. Elite Raptor units, likely drawn by the failed strike team's absence. He tapped Naira's shoulder twice. The leopard's ears perked forward, muscles coiling in silent readiness. Without a sound, Dane moved towards the tree line, each step deliberate, weight distributed evenly to avoid compressing moss or cracking brittle fungal roots. Naira flowed beside him, tail held low, paws rolling with the fluid grace of liquid shadow. They reached a low ridge of bulbous mushrooms, each taller than Dane himself, their caps drooping like tattered curtains. Dane slipped beneath their overhang, pressing against the moist stalk. Naira curled behind him, eyes fixed unblinking on the approaching threat. 3 raptor soldiers entered the clearing. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, avian-reptilian hybrids with black iridescent scales and crested skull ridges. Their elongated snouts clicked and hissed as they surveyed the carnage. Each wore integrated combat rigs with multi-barrel plasma lances mounted to their forearms, claws flexing restlessly against the controls. One raptor bent over the commander's corpse, nostrils flaring as he inhaled the fading scent of fear and blood. His yellow eyes narrowed, slitted pupils constricting to focused pinpoints. "Human scout," he rasped to his companions, voice laced with hatred and cautious respect. "The Ghostwalker is here." Dane listened, still as stone, heartbeat steady. Ghostwalker. They used the same name coalition troops whispered across their comm channels whenever Terran sabotage units struck. A name born from half-glimpsed shadows and sudden deaths. The raptor speaking now was an officer. His unit markings gleamed blue along his scale ridges, contrasting the matte black armor plates covering his chest and thighs. "Fan out," the officer ordered. "His beast is near." His beast. They still didn't understand. Naira was not a pet. Not a summoned monster. He was a soldier in his own right, as vital to mission parameters as Dane's rifle or knife. The raptors spread into a cautious arc, plasma lances raised. Their clawed feet gripped the moss lightly, movement balanced and precise. They were hunters too, trained to move silently, to read environmental cues invisible to less disciplined species. Dane analyzed their spacing. 2 remained within overlapping fields of fire, disciplined enough not to overextend. The third moved closer to Naira's position, unaware of the death coiled in those shadows. Dane felt the faint vibration of Naira's chest as the leopard's muscles tensed, each exhale silent and measured. He flicked his wrist, activating his suit's micro-drone. A thumb-sized ovoid detached from his gauntlet, whirring silently into the air. Its optical camouflage engaged instantly, projecting a faint heat signature behind the raptor closest to Naira. The raptor turned sharply, plasma lance raised, eyes scanning for a target that didn't exist. Naira moved. He surged forward in a blur of rosette muscle, jaws opening wide. The raptor barely registered the impact before the leopard's fangs pierced his throat and clavicle, crushing both in a single convulsive bite. Naira's momentum carried him past the dying soldier into the deeper shadows, his tail flicking to adjust balance before disappearing from view entirely. The raptor officer shrieked in fury, discharging a plasma burst towards Naira's last position. Glowing energy seared fungal stalks into steaming ash, the scent of burnt moss filling the clearing. The third raptor swept his lance across the undergrowth, trigger fingers twitching. Dane moved then. He slipped forward, rifle raised, exhaling as he squeezed the trigger. Suppressed plasma rounds spat silently into the officer's chest plate, each shot punching through scaled armor in glowing crimson blooms. The officer staggered backwards, limbs jerking before he collapsed against a fungal trunk, eyes dimming. The final raptor spun, plasma lance roaring. Dane dropped to his knee, shots scorching the air above his hood. He squeezed the trigger twice more. The first round took the raptor's knee, the second punched into his open mouth, sending him sprawling lifeless into the moss. Silence returned, broken only by Naira's faint growl as he emerged from the darkness to stand beside Dane. The leopard's fur was slick with black raptor blood, his muzzle dripping onto glowing spores that sizzled with every drop. Dane scanned the battlefield, confirming no additional signatures within sensor range. He exhaled slowly, calming his pulse. Every movement, every kill, every decision, all reaffirmed why he had been selected for this mission. Why he and Naira were deployed ahead of any conventional strike teams. Shadow warfare was not about raw power. It was about terror. Precision. Breaking the will of an enemy before the battle even began. He knelt beside the Raptor officer's corpse, removing the wrist data module with practiced efficiency. Coalition encryption was formidable, but Command would want every byte for their intelligence decryption divisions. Naira lowered his head, pressing his broad skull against Dane's shoulder. The scout scratched behind the leopard's ear, feeling the faint vibration of his contented purr echo through his own ribs. Their bond was unbreakable, forged in the blood-soaked jungles of 20 worlds. A man alone was dangerous. A man with a beast bred for shadow hunting was unstoppable. The distant echo of aircraft engines rolled across the treetops, rumbling low like an approaching storm. Dane raised his head, eyes narrowing as he analyzed the engine signatures. Coalition rapid response gunships. Heavy rotary cannons, thermobaric missiles, hull plating reinforced against pulse weapons. Dangerous. Not invincible. He rose fluidly to his feet, Naira shadowing his movements. The scout slung his rifle and drew his vibro-knife, the blade's monomolecular edge humming softly in the humid air. They would have to move fast now, slip deeper into the jungle's bioluminescent labyrinth before orbital scanners recalibrated. Extraction was no longer an option. Survival depended on patience, stealth, and precision kills to erode coalition morale until they retreated. Naira flicked his tail, his low growl fading into the pulsing insect chorus. Dane reached down, resting his hand on the leopard's muscular shoulder. "Time to vanish," he whispered. Together, man and beast slipped into the shadows, leaving only corpses and silent terror behind them. The jungle swallowed them with indifferent silence. Dane moved with Naira at his side, each step measured against the uneven fungal floor, every sense attuned to the rhythm of alien life around them. Phosphorescent spores drifted like pale snow, clinging to Naira's rosette fur before sliding free, leaving his coat pristine black once more. They wove through towering fungal trunks, Dane's eyes flicking between his visor's multispectrum overlays. Coalition gunships thundered overhead, their searchlights slicing through the darkness in sweeping arcs. Their engines reverberated through the canopy, vibrating down through the mushroom towers and into Dane's boots. Each pulse reminded him of what failure meant. Capture was not an option. Interrogation protocols alone would be a death sentence for Terran operations across this sector. Naira's ears flicked towards the north ridge. Dane followed the leopard's gaze, his visor picking up faint infrared blooms, 2 squads of Raptor troopers advancing along parallel trails. Their formation was tight, disciplined, trained to encircle prey and squeeze the life from it. Efficient. Predictable. He crouched behind a gnarled fungal root, brushing a gloved hand along Naira's muscular neck. The leopard pressed closer, silent as the grave, his faint growl vibrating through Dane's bones. Their connection was beyond verbal language, built on instinct and trust. Each understood the other's thoughts with an intimacy no human squadmate could match. He pulled a microcharge from his belt pouch, thumb flicking off the safety. Its shaped EMP would fry coalition optics within a 10-meter cone. Not ideal for killing but ideal for creating chaos. He tapped Naira twice on the shoulder and pointed towards the deeper shadow beyond the approaching squads. Naira's eyes narrowed in understanding before he melted backwards into the gloom, his massive paws silent against the moss. Dane waited, counting each heartbeat as the Raptor troopers drew closer. He felt their presence ripple through the jungle's subtle air currents. The lead Raptor stepped over a glowing root, its plasma lance sweeping side to side. Dane flicked the microcharge onto the fungal stalk in front of him, adhesive pad locking it in place. The blinking red indicator reflected across his visor for a brief instant. The troopers closed to 10 meters. Dane triggered the charge. A pulse of invisible energy blasted forward, instantly frying every optic lens in the cone. The Raptors shrieked in fury as their visors went dark. Dane moved. He surged from the shadows, vibro-knife in hand, blade humming with lethal energy. His first strike plunged through a trooper's neck joint, severing spine and artery in one thrust. He twisted away from a blind plasma swipe, reversed his grip, and buried the blade under another soldier's jaw, punching upward until it split the back of his helmet. Their screams merged into a discordant chorus of panic. From the darkness to their left came Naira's roar, low, deep, vibrating the air itself. The Raptors turned, blinded and desperate, as the massive leopard hurtled into their ranks. His jaws snapped closed around a trooper's skull, crushing it instantly. His claws ripped another soldier's chest open, armor plates shearing apart like paper beneath his curved talons. Dane pivoted, drawing his rifle in a single smooth motion. He fired 3 suppressed shots, each finding the weak seam behind a Raptor's knee guard. The soldiers crumpled, weapons falling uselessly from clawed hands as they gurgled wet death rattles into the moss. Naira dispatched the final trooper with a brutal swipe that nearly decapitated him. Blood sprayed in a dark arc across the glowing undergrowth, sizzling faintly where it splashed onto bioluminescent fungus. The clearing fell silent, save for the rasping breaths of the dying. Dane stepped back, scanning the jungle with disciplined precision. His visor flickered with new threat markers. The gunships were closing in, triangulating on the EMP burst. Time was running out. He reloaded, magazine sliding home with a clean metallic click. Naira stood beside him, his flanks heaving, muzzle slick with blood, eyes burning with silent anticipation. Dane rested a hand against the leopard's broad skull, feeling the powerful shiver run through him at the contact. They had trained for every scenario, but this was survival beyond training. This was instinct. The gunships roared overhead, their rotary cannons spinning up with whining menace. Searchlights stabbed down, slicing through the shadows to illuminate the battlefield's carnage. Dane moved immediately, sprinting between fungal trunks with Naira at his flank. Plasma bolts seared after them, burning glowing craters into the moss. Explosive shells tore apart massive mushrooms, showering the jungle floor with bioluminescent pulp. Dane dove behind a fungal root, breath controlled and measured despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. He assessed their position. Escape routes were collapsing under aerial sweeps. Extraction was impossible. Only one option remained. He flicked through his wrist gauntlet's tactical overlay, selecting the final microcharge in his pack. This one was different, a high-yield thermobaric grenade, designed to clear entrenched infantry positions. Here, beneath the dense fungal canopy, it would create an inferno the gunships could not ignore. He glanced at Naira. The leopard's tail flicked in silent question. Dane met his eyes, feeling the bond between them like a live wire humming with electricity. They both knew the cost of this choice. The alternative was capture. Death in chains. Or worse, a cage neither of them could escape. He pulled the grenade free, flicked off the safety and primed the timer for 10 seconds. Rising, he hurled it towards the massive fungal trunk supporting one of the gunship's hovering positions. The grenade arced through the dim light, landing against the trunk's base. Dane turned, gripping Naira's scruff. Together, they sprinted into the jungle's embrace. Behind them, the grenade detonated with an earth-shaking roar. The thermobaric wave expanded outwards in a white-hot sphere, vaporizing fungus, soil, and air in its immediate radius. The fungal trunk exploded upwards, its shattering mass slamming into the gunship hovering overhead. The craft spun wildly, tail rotor severed by tumbling debris, before it plummeted into the forest with a shrieking metallic wail. Its reactor detonated upon impact, sending a second concussive shockwave tearing through the undergrowth. Dane was thrown forward, the blast slamming him into a moss-covered boulder. His visor cracked along one edge, warning icons flaring in his HUD. Pain lanced through his ribs, but he forced himself to his knees. Naira staggered beside him, ears pinned back, smoke curling from his blood-slick fur. The leopard shook himself once, then pressed close to Dane's side. The remaining gunships pulled back, hovering beyond the Inferno's reach, their searchlights flickering in the rising smoke. Over comm channels, Dane heard coalition commanders shouting for retreat. Fear crackled through their encrypted frequencies like wildfire. The jungle burned beneath them, blazing with orange and violet flames as bioluminescent fungi combusted in showers of toxic sparks. He rose unsteadily, hand braced against Naira's flank. His ribs throbbed with each breath, pain blooming like hot iron across his side, but he ignored it. The mission was complete. The strike team lay dead, the Raptor squads butchered, and now the gunships retreated, unwilling to face the inferno or risk further losses to a single human and his beast. Dane turned towards Naira. The leopard met his gaze with steady, unblinking eyes. His chest rose and fell in deep, calm breaths despite the blood matting his whiskers. In those eyes, Dane saw the same resolve that burned in his own. The same acceptance of what they were, not just soldiers, not just killers, but predators forged in the shadows of Earth and perfected by its understanding of nature's most ancient laws. They moved forward into the burning jungle, silhouettes framed against the raging inferno behind them. Each step carried the scent of ash and blood, each stride an unspoken promise of survival. The coalition would return with more troops, heavier weapons, orbital strikes if necessary. Dane knew this. Naira knew it too. But for tonight they were alive. And the galaxy would remember the clearing where shadows became death, where a single human scout and his giant leopard companion silenced an entire strike force. As they vanished into the glowing haze, Dane allowed himself a single thought of cold satisfaction. They thought they were the hunters. They forgot Earth breeds its own predators.